They say there are 3 kinds of postings in the Galactic Coalition: cushy, cursed, and classified. Varnock Outpost was somehow all 3, built into the red spine of an iron-rich canyon. It overlooked nothing but endless sandstorms and creatures too stubborn to die. Officially, Varnock was a xenobiological research station. Unofficially, it was a place to put people who made other people uncomfortable. I was the first human ever stationed here. The locals didn't clap when I stepped off the shuttle. They hissed. A welcome committee of 5 stood at the docking platform. 1 insectoid V commander, 2 feathered Iraqi technicians, a crystalline medic, and finally, Dr. Halex, the station's xeno-veterinarian. He was a Yaldrin, a species with gnarled bark skin and vine-like appendages that twitched with nervous rhythm. "You are Lieutenant Arden Cross?" he asked, his voice like dry leaves rubbing together. I gave him a lazy salute. "That's me, reporting for security and survival Overwatch." "You will likely not survive," Halex said bluntly. I blinked. That's a hell of a greeting. He didn't smile. They don't smile, Yaldrin. Their vines just coiled tighter. The fauna here is beyond hostile. Venomous, aggressive, regenerative, especially the skin. You must never approach a skin. "Let me guess," I said. "Big teeth, bad attitude?" "Worse," he said, handing me a hollow slate. "Neurotoxic bite. Instant paralysis. Cardiac failure in 30 seconds. No known cure. Even the local predators avoid them." I glanced at the image. Looked like a hellish panther with bioluminescent fangs, and a tail like a scorpion whip. Very metal. "Got it," I said, tucking the slate into my field jacket. "Avoid the murder kitty." Halex wasn't done. "You will see scars. Perhaps even survivors. But none bitten. Only those who escaped with shallow scratches or escaped entirely. No one survives a bite, Lieutenant." I reached down and scratched an itch on my forearm. The fabric shifted. My sleeve rolled just enough for him to glimpse the small, raised crescent near my elbow. A scar. Faint, pink, perfectly healed. His vines recoiled. "That's a skin mark." "Yeah," I said, casually pulling the sleeve down. "Got bit last week. Not here, though. Jungle Planet. Scouting up nasty buggers." He froze. No response. Not even the rustling hiss of breath. "They're not so tough if you know how to move with them," I added. "They react to fear. You stay still, slow, and breathe calm, they hesitate." I jammed my knife in its second jaw and rolled right. Took a nick. Felt like a wasp sting. Was walking again in 5 minutes. Halex didn't speak. The other stood further back now, like I was glowing radioactive. I didn't care. I'd learned a long time ago that most aliens put humans in one of 2 boxes: unpredictable animals or underestimated anomalies. They were wrong on both counts. We're worse. Much worse. Varnock's interior was a maze of metallic halls and flashing hazard lights. Climate controls never quite worked, leaving the whole place smelling like scorched copper and fungal sweat. They gave me quarters in Section D, deepest, coldest, closest to the canyon wall. Typical. But that night, as I reviewed local threat reports and patched into the outpost security system, I noticed something off. Camera feeds near the eastern trench kept glitching. Blurs of movement. Motion alerts with no visuals. And always, that same thermal signature, hotter than anything else on the planet. I pinged command. "Just sandworms," came the Iraqi tech's reply. They passed through once a cycle. Harmless unless provoked. But I'd seen sandworms. Hell, I'd ridden one once during a rescue mission on Cobra Prime. This wasn't that. This thing was moving with intent. Predators don't stalk unless they're hunting. And the next morning, a crate of medical supplies was found torn open outside the loading bay. Clawed apart, deep grooves gouged in the walls, half-melted footprints in the alloy floor. Halex's diagnosis? Skin attack. "But the outpost shield perimeter is sealed," I said. He met my eyes. "They don't care about shields. Not when they're curious." Curious. They adapt. Mimic their learning. They've never encountered a human before. I stared back at him. "No," I said, "they haven't." And deep inside I wondered what happens when a predator meets something even worse. The predator that watches back. There's a quiet kind of danger, not the kind that makes your heart race. The kind that slows it, that hushes everything else around you. That's what it felt like in Varnock the next morning. The skin had been inside the perimeter. And worse, it hadn't attacked for food. It had watched. I reviewed the security footage again, scrubbing frame by frame. Half the outpost cameras were blind in the eastern trench, but a few internal sensors had captured more than just glitchy blur. Heat bloom, weight displacement, even electromagnetic distortion, like the thing was interfering with electronics just by being there. It knew where the sensors were, and it had learned how to avoid them. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. I just watched, waited, and sure enough, it came back that night. Midnight. I was sitting in the security room with a lukewarm nutrient bar and half a cup of synth caffeine when the alert chimed. Perimeter breach. Sector D6. That was my hallway. I was out the door before the alarm could finish its second chime. Boots silent. Pulse steady. Rifle? No. Too slow indoors. I took my shock blade and a flare canister. The hallway was dim. Emergency red strobes flickered along the floor. Silence buzzed in my ears. Then click. Not the sound of footsteps. Not breathing. Something else. Claws tapping metal. I froze. Listened. The sound came again, closer. And then it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. In thought. A sharp pressure at the base of my skull. Not pain, exactly. More like static made sentient. Not prey. Not prey. New thing. Warm thing. Different smell. I stepped into the light. And there it was. The skin. Even knowing what it looked like didn't prepare me. 7 feet of coiled muscle and dark, chitinous plating that shimmered like wet obsidian. Twin jaws with dripping mandibles. And those eyes, luminescent and focused. It didn't charge. Didn't growl. It just tilted its head. Why don't you run? I slowly reached into my vest pocket and tossed a protein ration on the floor between us. The skin didn't flinch. It just looked at me and then down at the bar. You knew I was here, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I let my heartbeat answer. Steady, measured. I took a step forward. The skin stepped back. I smiled. Not so scary up close, huh? I said aloud, voice calm but firm. You thought I'd run. You wanted to see fear. It blinked. A flicker of those vertical pupils. I kept walking. You felt it before, didn't you? I whispered. When you bit me, that moment when I didn't react. When I understood you, its jaws shifted. A tremble in the neck frills. Almost confusion. I held out my arm and slowly pulled back my sleeve, revealing the scar again. You remember this, don't you? You should be dead. I'm not, I said. You made a mistake. It lunged. Fast. Too fast. But I wasn't there anymore. I dropped, twisted, rolled under its leap, and jammed the shock blade into the floor where it landed. The crack of bioelectric feedback shook the walls. The skin howled, not in pain, but in surprise. Then it vanished, just blinked into shadow and was gone. I sat against the wall for a minute, breathing slow, listening to the sound of silence again. When I reported the breach to command, they didn't believe me. Halleck stared in horror as I recounted the encounter, his vines twitching in disbelief. You spoke to it, he asked. With your mind? No, I said. It spoke to me. That's not possible. Tell that to the scar. He examined it again, closer this time. His tendrils didn't recoil. They lingered. There's no venom residue, he muttered. No necrosis. Not even neuroscarring. This shouldn't be real. I asked. Get used to it. The outpost commander, a no-nonsense Vree named Kalzer, was less impressed. You should have killed it, she hissed. If I'd killed it, I said, we wouldn't be talking about why it came back. She didn't like that. But Halleck's just stared at me, calculating something silently. And then he said it. They've never come back for anyone before. Not after feeding. Not even after a failed kill. He looked at me like I was the predator now. You weren't prey, he said. I nodded once. I never was. Later, alone in my quarters, I patched into the sensor grid and set a perimeter watch. Manual override, triple redundancy. The skin wasn't hunting me. It was studying me. But what it didn't realize was I was studying it, too. Let's see who learns faster. Apex protocols. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Because I was curious. There's a pattern of predators, especially apex ones. Most hunt for hunger, for territory, for instinct. But the skin? This one was operating on something older, something deeper. Recognition. Morning brought no alarms, just silence. Varnok's corridors buzzed with the usual tension, but beneath it, something else was growing. Whispers. The kind that slither through vents and tech channels. The kind people think don't get noticed by command. But I heard them. The human made contact. It didn't kill him. It watched him. By midday, I was called into a council room. Bare metal walls, low lighting, and a circular table surrounded by off-world brass and science division, heads blinking nervously behind their breathing apparatuses. Calzer stood at the head of the room, mandibles twitching in irritation. Dr. Hallex sat off to the side, oddly quiet. The station's AI, VRN-1, projected holograms of the creature's movements through the outpost perimeter, the heat signatures, the claw marks, the escape path. And then the image of me, standing face-to-face with it. Calzer's voice was sharp. You engaged the skin. You did not neutralize. You did not report. You interacted. I survived. I corrected. And in case you forgot, that's what you posted me here to do. A crystalline officer chimed in with a voice like glass on metal. Your file states you have Class A resistance to neural intrusions, but not immunity. You let it inside. No, I said flatly. It let me inside. That silenced the room. I stood, pacing. Listen, you're all used to thinking of the skin like they're wild animals. But this one's smarter. It doesn't just adapt to tech or avoid cameras. It learns from people. It stalked me without attacking. It watched how I moved, how I responded. It even mirrored some of my stance. Tail positioning, left shoulder lead. That's mimicry behavior. That's cognition. Calzer hissed. So you're suggesting what? That it's forming an alliance? No, I said. I'm saying it's curious. And curiosity is the first step toward communication. A pause. Then Halleck spoke, finally. We've always believed the skin were biological apex anomalies. But what if they're not just predators? What if they're proto-intelligence? A distributed hive mind still forming identity through experience. I nodded. And I might be its first variable, the one that didn't run, the one that bit back. Another pause. And then Calzer activated the table's secure command node. I'm authorizing Apex protocols, she said. From this moment forward, the human is designated Category Zeta engagement clearance. You will not be interfered with. You will attempt control contact. If it escalates, I'll end it. I finish for her. I'm not here to make friends. Later that evening, Hallex came to find me in the training room. I was mid-drill, blade in one hand, shock baton in the other, running combat patterns on a sim dummy shaped like a skin. You realize what you become, don't you? He said softly. I didn't stop the drill. Explain it to me. You're not just a threat anymore. You're a symbol. I paused, breathing steady. To the station? No, he said. To the skin. He held up a data pad. On it, thermal images, new ones, for different skin. All outside the perimeter now. All watching. Not moving. Just observing. They're coming, Hallex whispered. More of them. Drawn by the one that saw you. And none of them have attacked. That got my attention. I stopped moving. They're waiting. I stood that night on the east platform, gear packed light. Heartbeat a steady metronome against the wind. No rifle. No armor. Just me and the scar. The sky above Varnok was an ocean of stars, too many to name, each one cold and ancient and distant. And then I felt it, a pulse in the ground. Not movement. Not seismic. Intent. The first skin stepped into view, tail low, claws relaxed. No threat posture. The second emerged moments later. Smaller, younger, then two more. 4 skin, all watching me. The original, my skin, circled from the ridge above and descended in silence. It stopped just meters away. I took a step forward. So, did it? You are alone, Colin. No, I said. I brought you a gift. I opened the case I'd carried and placed it on the ground. Inside, a data core wrapped in heat shielding. The skin blinked. Tension rippled through the others. What is it? Colin, everything we know about you. Movement patterns. Biological scans. Tactical reports. It's what we use to prepare against you. A long pause. Why give it? Colin, I looked the creature dead in the eyes. Because I want to see if you can become more than what they fear you to be. And then I turned my back on it, deliberately, exposing spine, heart, neck. Every primal rule said I should have died in that moment. Instead, I heard claws step forward. And then the case was gone. No attack, no roar, just absence and silence. Back in my quarters, hours later, I found a single object on my bed. A skin tooth, fresh, long, carved with alien glyphs. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. A new kind of scar. Heavy, sharpened, etched with a script no one had ever seen up close, let alone held. The glyphs glowed faintly in the dark, bioluminescence, not artificial tech. Like it was still alive, still watching. They didn't leave it by accident. Skin don't do accidents. I locked the door to my quarters, dimmed the lights, and set the tooth on the table under the wall cam. Let command see it. Let them watch. Maybe they'd finally understand what I already knew. The war wasn't between predator and prey anymore. It was becoming something else. A test. And I was the one being measured. Hallex arrived first. No request, no knocking. Just a faint rustle of barkskin and vines as he entered like smoke through my doorway. You received this last night? He asked, his voice hushed. Found it on my bunk, I said, motioning to the scarred tooth. Didn't hear a thing. He approached slowly, like it might detonate. His tendrils hovered over the markings. These glyphs, they're not just symbols. They pulse on a biological rhythm. This is language, but also something else. Identification. Naming ritual, maybe. What does it say? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. But it knows who you are. That mark is deliberate. He turned his head, vines twitching like antennae. You've been marked, Cross. Yeah, I said, and not for death. Calzer wasn't as thrilled. I should have had you pull the moment the skin spared you, she snapped during the daily command briefing. This is not a negotiation table. This is a containment zone. You authorized Apex protocols. I reminded her. I'm following them. You're freelancing, she spat. We're supposed to be studying the threat. You're becoming part of it. I'm learning how to survive it, I said, rising from my seat. And you know what? So are they. Silence. Then Hallex spoke on the side, softly but with gravity. They've marked him. Not as prey, not as rival, as witness. Calzer froze. Explain. Hallex's barkskin shifted, unease radiating off him in waves. This symbol, he said, projecting a scanned image of the glyph on the table, is identical to one we recorded at a crash site 3 solar cycles ago. A skin vessel. It was destroyed in atmosphere. We assumed the glyphs were decorative tribalism. They're not, I said. No, Hallex agreed. They're ceremonial, passed down from survivors. That tooth didn't come from just any skin. It came from one who saw something and lived. That makes it sacred. Calzer clenched her mandibles. So what does that make him? There was a long silence before Hallex answered. Legend. The next few days blurred together. The skin didn't attack again. But they didn't vanish, either. They appeared along the ridgelines, silhouettes in the heat shimmer, just watching, rotating, shifting, never close enough to engage, never far enough to forget. It was psychological. A pressure, a presence, like being inside a room where something breathes in unison with you. But from behind the mirror, Then, on day 4, something broke the pattern. A breach alert, Sector B3. Civilian med lab. I was there in under 90 seconds. What I found, a mess, but not a massacre. The room was torn apart, but not bloodied. Equipment destroyed. Walls clawed. Samples missing. One terrified Iraqi medic was hiding beneath an emergency cot. "The skin," he stammered. It didn't kill me. It just took something." "What?" He pointed with a trembling wing hand. I followed the direction. A missing sample chamber. Biogenetic data. On me, blood work, neural maps, scar tissue scans from my initial arrival. They weren't hunting. They were studying. Later that night, I sat alone outside the security perimeter. No armor, no blade, just the tooth around my neck and the cold desert wind scratching through my hair. And they came again. 7 this time. Silent, barely visible, just shapes in the shimmer. The first one, the one who bit me, stepped forward. Close. So close I could see its breath fog in the moonlight. "You carry our mark, Colon." I nodded. I carry the scar. It tilted its head, those alien eyes gleaming. "Why did you live, Colon?" I swallowed. "Because I didn't fight you with fear. I fought you with understanding. You broke pattern, Colon. You did too." A pause. Then something I hadn't felt before. Grief. A deep, resonant ache radiating from the creature. A memory, not in words. In images. A skin dead on a table. Scalpel marks. Restraints. A human base. Laughter. Cruelty. Needles. They'd been captured before. Studied. Killed. Tortured. And now, this one, mine, was trying to find something different. Not all 2 legs hurt, Colon. It wasn't a question. It was hope. I stared at the creature. The breath caught in my throat. "No," I whispered. "Not all." Then, for the first time, it knelt, lowered its head, and the others followed. I stood alone in the desert, surrounded by apex predators bowing like wolves to a firekeeper. And I finally understood. The scar wasn't just survival. It was initiation. A half-corrupted security drone caught footage of the skin kneeling in front of me in the desert. It streamed a jittering, grainy, 32-second feed to the orbital comms net before dying of sudden battery failure. Probably tampered with, honestly. Didn't matter. The image went everywhere. The apex predator of half the known frontier bowing its head to a scar human in a ragged shirt under a fractured moon. No context. No voice. Just that haunting moment. And suddenly, I wasn't just the human who survived a bite. I was the human who tamed a nightmare. They called me to the bridge next morning. Command deck was lit red, security state crimson. Cows are pacing, Halleck's hunched like wind-blown bark, and 3 new faces joining us via live holo feed. Galactic representation. One looked like a glass sculpture dipped in lava. Another, a floating orb of whispering mist. The last? An armored Tulak, warlord, who growled when he saw me. "This human has compromised the natural threat index of skin," the lava glass one said, their tone like shattering wind chimes. "The footage demonstrates an unauthorized rapport with a Class 7 apex species." "You make that sound like a crime," I replied. "It is," the warlord snarled. "Predators are managed, bound, caged, not reasoned with." I looked at Kauser. She didn't defend me. "Figures. This is an unprecedented opportunity," Halleck said, stepping forward. "We're witnessing behavioral evolution in real time. The skin are reclassifying humans, not as prey nor as rivals, but as something other. We must understand what that means." "Other," the mist being hissed. "You mean threat. An unknown alliance between a Death World predator and a Terran? That's how empires fall." I folded my arms. Funny, I thought alliances were how they start. I wasn't detained. Not officially, but I was confined. For my own protection. They posted 2 guards outside my quarters and remotely locked my gear. Didn't stop me. The skin came that night anyway. Right through the walls. No alarms. No breach alerts. Just a breeze of cold air. And then my original skin, my scar maker, was standing inside like it had always belonged. The skyscreamers watch, : You mean the council? I said. They fear unity, : It crouched, eyes never leaving mine. We were made alone, designed alone, hunted, feared, until you, : I swallowed. They're going to try and kill you now. I said quietly. All of you. They will try, but the pattern has changed, : Then it did something I wasn't prepared for. It sat on my floor, cross-legged, tail wrapped forward, watching, waiting, not as predator, not even as equal, as student. By morning, 3 more skin had joined it. I didn't open the door. They didn't ask. They just appeared, silent, poised, watching my every word, movement, breath. Hallex found me mid-conversation with one of them. I was sketching on the floor in charcoal, maps, battle formations, memory rituals. They were mimicking, mirroring, adding glyphs to their own patterns beside mine. He just stood in the doorway, awestruck. They're learning language, he whispered. They're building it, with you. Not just language, I said, tapping my sketch. They're offering structure, ritual. They're turning instinct into culture. One of the skin extended a claw and carved a perfect spiral beside my human tactical symbol. I recognized it. Formation strategy, adaptive flanking. They'd studied our war manuals, and they were improving them. That's when the drone strike hit. The roof exploded above us. A council-sanctioned kinetic strike from orbit. My quarters folded like paper. Metal screamed. Air pressure dropped. But I didn't die because they covered me. All 4 of them. Claws out. Backs curved. Teeth bared at the sky. And when the fire cleared, not a single one had fled. Calzer burst into the rubble minutes later, her mandibles twitching. You protected him? She gasped, staring at the skin forming a living shield around me. They didn't move, didn't snarl, just stared at her in perfect unity. I rose, coughing dust. They saved me, I said. They chose to save me. Hallex arrived then, datapad in hand, shaking with urgency. We just received a message, he said, encoded from the skin horde on 3 other worlds. I blinked. There are more? He nodded. They say, the scarred one is witness. We will not return to silence. Calza took a step back, horror flooding her face. They're unifying, she whispered. You taught them solidarity. You turned predators into a nation. I didn't sleep that night. Too much noise. From the outside, screaming reports, council fleets mobilizing, calls for extermination. From the inside, skin speech, getting sharper, clearer, more fluid. They'd started using my words, shaped in clicks and growls, like knives learning to sing. But the loudest noise came from me, not in voice, in purpose. I stood in the half-broken war room, surrounded by creatures once feared as the worst in existence. And I realized I wasn't just their ambassador anymore. I was becoming their leader. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. Apex Rebellion. They called it the Fracture. 1 week after the drone strike, 3 border colonies of the Galactic Council went dark. No distress signal, no evacuation order. Just silence. The cause? Not warships. Not viral bioweapons. Not even skin raids. Uprisings. Led by mixed forces, humans, outcasts, and, for the first time ever, skin acting in unison with non-Eschene allies. And at the center of it all, my name, my scar, my face. I stared at the hollow screen in stunned silence. The council had framed it as a breakdown of control, predator infection, they called it. They played the same loop of footage. Me walking through fire-lit ruins, flanked by skin on either side, children trailing behind them unafraid. They didn't show the food drops we coordinated, the safe zones we cleared, the talks we held under burning skies. Instead, they gave the galaxy a different narrative. The scarred one has unleashed the apex. The infection of loyalty must be purged before it spreads further. They'd stopped calling me human entirely. Now I was just the infection. Calzer slammed the datapad on the table. You've lit a fuse you can't extinguish, Cross. I didn't flinch. The fuse was already lit. I just showed people where the matches were. Hallex, calmer, turned from a window. Do you understand what this means? I nodded. Yeah, the war's changed. The rules have changed. And we're already losing to a game we don't understand. Kauser hissed. You think this is progress? No, I said, I think this is inevitable. I stepped to the center of the table and tapped the image of a skin kneeling beside a human medic. She was healing one of them. He let her. She stitched the predator's artery with trembling hands, and he didn't bite. I looked around. They want something new, something beyond tooth and claw. We can either help them get there or try to destroy it and become the very monsters we accuse them of being. Hallex murmured, You created a new axis, not predator versus prey. I nodded. Oppressor versus evolution. The next day, the orders came. Council ships en route. Total quarantine of our sector. Full planetary lockdown. Kauser was fuming. They've written us off. Everyone here, including me, is now considered compromised. Then maybe it's time we stop playing their game, I said. She turned to me, eyes burning. You think you can beat a council fleet? I shook my head. No, but I think the skin can. We held our war council in the ruins of the science wing. Cracked stone tables, cables hanging like vines, holograms flickering under open sky. Skin from 5 hives stood in a ring around me. Some bore ritual scars. Others wore fragments of scavenged armor. But all were listening, not snarling, not posturing, listening. I laid out the plan. We can't match the council's firepower, but we don't have to. We use their fear, their arrogance, their belief that you're unthinking beasts. I pointed to projected flight paths of incoming ships. They'll land with ground teams, thinking this is a mop-up op. They won't expect you to coordinate, to speak, to plan. One of the skin, Varese, the largest among them, click her fangs together in understanding. We will show them teeth sharpened by unity, another lean forward. And we will show them mercy sharpened by choice, that stopped me cold. Mercy, from a species once infamous for turning entire biomes into silent hunting grounds. They were evolving faster than any council race ever had, because they wanted to, because someone finally showed them another path. We struck during the drop phase. Council troopers landed in predictable formations, shock teams fanning out, armored walkers establishing perimeter zones. But what they stepped into wasn't chaos. It was choreography, traps they didn't see, movement they didn't expect. The skin hunted, yes, but they didn't slaughter. They disabled, they disarmed. And then, in front of 100 stunned council marines, one skin spoke. Fluently, this war ends with words or extinction. Choose. The footage leaked, of course. 100 perspectives, 1,000 angles. A skin dragging a wounded marine to safety. A human shielding a predator with her own body. Me, standing between both sides, holding up the tooth, the symbol of the bite that started it all. And the galaxy? It didn't go quiet this time. It roared, half in fury, half in hope. The council declared a state of emergency. Dozens of species voted for full cleansing protocols. But others, those living on the fringes, those long suppressed, began to rise. Old rebellions flared back to life, this time under a single banner. The Scarred, a new coalition. Not prey, not predator, but those who refused to be defined by either. As I sat on the ridge that night, skin gathered beside me like shadows made loyal, Hallex approached with a datapad. You're being called to testify before the Galactic Tribunal, he said. They want to question the legitimacy of your leadership. I smirked. They can question it all they want. I stood. They're not the ones I answered anymore. Behind me, the skin raised their heads to the stars. For the first time in history, they howled, not in hunger, but in defiance. And across 100 worlds, that sound was answered. The Scarred One stands. I'd never been to the Galactic Tribunal before. No human had. The chamber was suspended in orbit over the neutral moon of Corthan, a gleaming sphere of polished obsidian. held together by gravity anchors and the egos of the oldest species in the known stars. I was escorted in chains, not because they feared me, but because they feared what I represented. I stood at the heart of a ring of light, surrounded by the 72 seats of the council. Each one was occupied by a being older, richer, or deadlier than anything humans had ever dreamed of before we left Earth. And yet every eye was on me. No introduction, no formal charge. They didn't even address me by name. Just a single voice from the central spire, disembodied, cold, metallic. You brought predators to heal. You weaponized terror. You fractured the balance. What do you say in your defense? Human. I looked up slowly. They came to me broken, snarling, alone. You called them monsters, caged them, hunted them like animals. I didn't change them. I listened. A murmur rippled through the chamber. A floating mass of tendrils hissed. You turned them into an army. I nodded. No, I turned them into a people. There's a difference. A skeletal arbiter rasped. And when they turn on our enforcers? When they dismantled peacekeeping ships? Was that your idea of progress? I stepped forward. Peace? You never gave them peace. You gave them containment. You called it civilization, but you left them in the dark. And now they've lit a torch. Another counselor leaned forward, voice thick with venom. And you are that torch? I smiled. No, I'm the scar, the memory of the wound you ignored. They showed images next. Footage of cities burned during uprisings. Wounded civilians, dead soldiers, crying children, all branded with my face, graffitied on walls, stitched into banners, carved into skin ritual stones. You are worshipped, one of the council accused. I turned, slowly, deliberately. They don't worship me. They remember what I survived. I raised my right arm and pulled the fabric back, exposing the mark. The scar, faint, faded, but unmistakable, the crescent curve of a skin bite. I didn't choose this scar. I didn't want it, but I lived through it, and so did they. Silence. Then the voice again. Do you deny that your actions led to rebellion? No, I said. I embrace it. I let the words hang, then added, louder, they rebelled against silence, against the idea that they were only teeth in rage. You want to know what I did? I gave them permission. I showed them they could be more, and they chose it. Another hollow flared to life, a skin, tending the crops on a reclaimed colony moon. Another, teaching younglings in front of chalk wall, scribbled with both glyphs and human script. Another, burying a council soldier, folded claws pressed to its chest in mourning. These are the predators you still fear, I said, not because of what they've done, but because of what they might become. At that, the chamber began to fracture, not physically, politically, dozens of voices shouting over each other, some demanding execution, others demanding amnesty, a few asking questions. At the center of it all, I stood quiet, waiting, until a chime echoed through the tribunal. Unscheduled delegation. No one knew what to expect, until the doors opened, and they walked in, skin, not in armor, not in stealth, in robes, ceremonial, decorated with symbols I didn't recognize, some clearly human-inspired. They didn't snarl, they didn't growl, they bowed to the tribunal, then turned and bowed to me. Gasps, hisses, outrage, blasphemy. Someone shouted. No, I said softly. Diplomacy. One of them, Varese, stepped forward. She did not kneel. She did not flinch. She spoke. In the past, we were alone, bound by blood and instinct. Now we are bound by choice and by story. She placed something in the center of the tribunal floor, a stone tablet. On it, the skin glyph for hunter, fused with the Terran letter H. Hybrid, united. Then she spoke the name I hadn't heard aloud in months. Cross, the scarred one, : not in reverence, in respect. I met the council's eyes. All this time, you thought the scar made me dangerous. You were wrong. I walked to the center of the room, past the hovering weapons, past the Armada's judgment. What made me dangerous was what came after. when I stopped fearing the pain and started understanding it. I placed my hand on the tablet. A soft click. Recognition. One who chose to survive, : The council had no immediate response. No vote was cast that day. No execution ordered. But something had changed. Something fundamental. They didn't chain me when I left the chamber. They didn't silence the footage that followed. They couldn't, because outside the tribunal, across 1,000 systems, millions were already watching, already choosing, already changing. I boarded the shuttle back to the surface alone. No guards, no escort. But I wasn't alone when I landed. Hallex was there. So was Kalzer. And behind them, a growing crowd. Humans, aliens, skin, all watching me with the same expression. Not worship, not fear, readiness. Kalzer stepped forward, folding her arms. "You're not just a scar anymore," she said. I nodded. "No, I'm a witness." And the galaxies just started listening. I looked to the stars, the endless web of fire and void stretching outward. And for the first time since that bite, I saw a future not shaped by predator or prey, but by the ones who dared to rewrite what either meant.